Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today is our June recap episode, which means you will hear parts of my interviews with Matt Harvey from Gruesome, Gabe and Rasmus from the Gosta Berlings Saga, Kyle Schaefer from Fallujah, Alex Garcia Rivera from Bloodhorse, Eric from Hiroe, Austin Evans from Orthodox, Tom Angelripper from Sodom, Kasey Karlsen from Deadlands, John and Matthieu from TSS, and Ryan from Death Rattle. If you like the bits of interview that you hear, I would love it if you went back and listened to the full episode, help the show out, discover a new band. If you like the clips of the music, go check out the artist albums and support the bands that are on the show. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. Thanks so much for checking us out. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our Discord server, our mailing list, and our Patreon page, where $1 a month gets you early access to every episode. And if you dig what you hear and think somebody in your circle of influence might also enjoy the podcast, share it with them. Enjoy today's recap of all the episodes that aired in the month of June.
Surrounded by silence, in an isolated world, remember words, now so far away.
Does it help you to have that like North Star of like death as your influence when writing, where it's not like you can clearly delineate like Gruesome from Exhumed?
I mean, it does, you know, and like I don't know, I'm one of those people where I like parameters because that's sort of, even if you are looking at whatever, the blank page or silence or whatever, you know, even if you're starting from zero,
yeah,
at least you know where you're not going to go, you know? And that sort of, it makes it easier to sort of get moving. Because I always find that even if the first idea is terrible, just getting the first idea is the thing that, you know, gets you going and into the better ideas. So yeah, I like it. And I think, you know, it started out as just a fun kind of thing to do, that it wasn't challenging because I knew the material inside out that I was referencing. Obviously, it was something that took work and it took a lot of care to try to make it as good as possible. So it wasn't just like I just crapped out whatever and you know, didn't take it seriously. But in terms of, I didn't have to really like learn the language, you know, that because Chuck is he plays in patterns, and he uses a lot of similar intervals and certain devices that are very distinctively his, whether they're note choices. There's like only certain kinds of picking that Chuck does, like Chuck doesn't gallop, for example. And so that kind of stuff I had known since I was a kid, because, you know, I spent so much time in my bedroom playing Scream, Bloody Gore, Leprosy, and Spiritual Healing. You know, I should have been like out on dates or whatever. But that's what I was doing, you know, when I was 13, 14 into 15, you know, just playing and learning those riffs and trying to figure out what is it that makes this death metal and not thrash, like, you know. So that part of it was just kind of embedded in my DNA. And it was really fun to go back and revisit that. And, it was fun kind of dealing with some of the same kinds of things that Chuck was singing about, you know, the Italian splatter movies and the dangerous lost tribes of cannibals and stuff like that. That was really, that felt really like home base for me. As time has gone on, it's still really fun, but it's a little bit more challenging because every album Chuck sort of, you know, it's like he's got a paint set and then he starts with like 4 colors, and then the second album has like 7 or 8, and then third one has 12, and then by the time you're on Human, you're like, holy shit, this is a lot of stuff. So it gets more and more challenging to basically kind of familiarize myself with the musical language of the later Death catalog. And I, it's a little daunting because the expectation, I think, with every record that we do gets a little higher. And, nobody, I think, puts more pressure on us than we do. But, we try to be really respectful to the source material,
How has the writing process evolved over the years, especially as technology has changed and made it easier to be in different locations? And you're still seem like very much a band that's built on the jam principle, the being in the room and creating in that sort of way.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, back in the early days, I think we were very much a rehearsing band. I mean, we basically rehearsed all the songs to an extent that we knew them very well before actually going into recording. Starting off recording them in our own studio together with people, going on to entering other kind of studios, but always really well rehearsed. I would say that it was probably around the time when Rasmus joined that changed a little bit. Mm-hmm. We had, the album Et X was the album when Rasmus joined the band. That was quite a weird album in many ways because it was both musically and how we recorded it actually, because we were in the middle of Henrik Palm, which you mentioned earlier. He plays on some of the songs, and then he kind of left the band, and Rasmus came in, and also drummer Alex wasn't really active with him in the band during that time due to personal reasons. So we were kind of in a weird place personally back then. And I remember Rasmus coming in there and really kind of saving that record in many aspects together with Fagge, who was the producer of that album, who really kind of made that album work, I would say, given that it's really scattered or something.
Yeah, so when I came into the picture, you had two songs that were basically like the Henrik Palm tracks, finished solid sort of rock, prog rock songs, and then you had like it's a finished. This is the music. You presented it a bit like these are the songs. This is going to become the album, but it was just like really scattered music with drum machines and like no real structures. It was just like some sequencers, drum machines, and then just barely like any melodies or anything. So I remember like that was the sort of trial for joining the band. I guess I got sent a couple of songs. And I guess just I don't know what you guys said, like do what you want with them, like. So I went to my own studio and just started like recording stuff, trying to come up with melodies and like build. I think I like started cutting them up a bit and like structuring them like, okay, so then I'll add this sort of chorus here, and I add a bunch of stuff to create dynamics. Recorded a bunch of like clarinets and synthesizers and things. But it's, I think that was probably. I wasn't there for the first half of the project, but I think from everything I've heard and seen, that was really sort of one extreme of that. Like not jammed at all, just like ideas you basically record, and then the first recording of them is the album. And then we get we do that's been a pattern. Like the next album after that, we recorded almost completely live, like full band at the same time. Konkret musik. We rented a studio and got a couple of producers, and then just rehearsed and put down the songs, as they were supposed to be from the sort of first
basically
to last beat.
Basically during a weekend. It was a really fast album as well at Concrete Music. And then, of course, we worked with kind of overdubs for a few weeks as well. But it was quite a fast album, actually. So and then this last album, which is also, I guess, in some way another end of the spectrum, where it's like both these kind of factors combined in one way. I mean, we've been working with this album for 5 years, more or less.
Yeah.
Both kind of really, really rehearsing stuff, and also kind of the other end of the spectrum, just ideas thrown into the mix. And so it's kind of a mix of both those worlds, I would say.
Yeah, that's been a lot of discussions about this, like the process, and we think like, okay, we think we figured out the perfect process now. Like, okay, so you write the song, and then you have a demo stage, because it's easy to like add the building blocks when you have it like just basically drum machines and just like parts. You make wide strokes with a brush, and then we rehearse, and then we feel out the song. So we actually write it together in the room and like feel it how it's sounding together as a band, and then we do a sort of a proper recording, or perhaps a sort of demo version of it, so we then can track it in a nice studio and stuff. So we've been, almost every song has been a new trying out a new sort of concept, a new method.
Yeah, and it's
we never found the right one.
Yeah.
We say Xenotaph, but it's whatever. It's a made up word, so you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Where did the album title and concept come from?
Yeah, so it is a concept album. There's like a story that goes through the whole thing that I sort of worked on before I wrote any lyrics for it. The title came way later, so I'll talk about the title after, I suppose.
Okay.
Because the title was like, we really struggled with the title, and that was like the last piece of anything for the album. Like we had artwork, we had final mixes, we had song titles for everything, and could not find a single title we liked until we came up with that one. So that it came later. But basically so the concept is, for this album, I knew I wanted to tell one sort of story throughout. Like our previous album, Empyrean, had different concepts for each song, and the concepts were something we spent a lot of time talking about. And I was like, let's just talk about it once this time, pick one concept, and then I can just write a lot of songs about one thing, but also at the same time, like give the album kind of its own identity. Because I really wanted, like before we started this album, like one thing I knew I wanted was for the album to have like an identity, like to stand out from the rest of the catalog, being like, this album has its own sort of feelings or ideas, whatever, and like I want this album to be its own special thing that like feels new and cohesive and intentional. And so concept album made sense to me. So basically I wanted to write something vaguely in the realm of like sci-fi, because we all love sci-fi in the band, and just the aesthetics of the artwork and everything over the years blends with that well, I think. But I didn't want to lose like the like personal emotional aspect of the lyrics. So I was like, okay, something that's like, it feels like some trippy sci-fi story, but also somehow emotional at the same time, and like relatable, like real. So I basically arrived at the concept of death as like my sort of topic for the story, because I thought it was something that is like real and does have like a lot of room to write like in a very visceral emotional sense about, but at the same time has this sort of like mystery to it, and this leaves a lot of room for imagination, like what happens when we die. Maybe it's some crazy sci-fi journey that happens when you die. And so that was sort of the idea, was the story begins at the moment of the narrator's death, when he wakes up like in some other dimension, basically, like, and I thought rather than imagining an afterlife as anything resembling heaven or hell, or like what people typically imagine. Like, imagine if it's just so outside of your comprehension that you're just like, what the fuck is this? Where am I? Like, what is, like just so far beyond anything that anybody could have like imagined, and like literally beyond like human senses is like something that I try to convey through the lyrics. And basically the character wakes up and meets, basically sees the album cover. Like, the album cover was chosen early in the process, and I worked it into the story basically. And I imagined the figure on the cover as this like angelic sort of guide that he meets when he awakens in this new dimension. And basically, as the story unfolds, like this guide sort of takes him through this new world and helps him to understand where he is and what's going on, and like, which also involves a lot of reflection, looking back like at his past life and memories. And there's this whole sort of like inward and outward psychedelic journey, I guess, being guided through by this angelic sort of being. And the character becomes very like attached to this world, feels like he's in this new enlightened plane of existence, like he's truly transcended, that this is like the real elevated world, like, happy to leave his old body and world behind basically. But because one, there has to be some kind of plot events in a story, and two, this is a death metal album, I don't want a nice journey just about, oh, this guy goes here and it's wonderful. Like, the twist that I came up with that happens later is the fact that it's revealed much later in the album that basically, just when this character is so attached to this world and, no longer has a desire to go back, basically, because there's this element of like having the choice to go back and be reincarnated or something like that, but the character chooses to stay essentially. But basically, the plot twist is that the whole thing has been an illusion. Character's not even dead at all. He's like asleep or in a coma or something like that. Oh, and this being is basically some sort of like interdimensional parasite that has gotten into his mind and is like convincing him to stay trapped in this world so it like can feed on his soul or something like that. And it's all an illusion essentially. Yeah. And basically at the end, like, the character escapes, gets away from this thing and wakes up back in the real world after having thought he was dead and experienced all these things that you literally can't ever describe to somebody, and basically sort of ends on a note where it's like this sort of ambiguous sort of feeling where it's like survived and he's back, but also like, what was that? Was any of that real? It felt, very real. And like, you don't know if you do go there when you die, you don't know if this thing's going to come back to get you. It's, just sort of this like whole weird sort of psychedelic, like questioning yourself of like, what was that? It's, that's sort of the story.
What led you to be an all analog studio?
I mean, I don't really know. I just, I don't know. When I got into recording, it was a really organic process. Like, I've been just a drummer my whole life and not really thinking about, a career in audio or anything. But it was like right after American Nightmare broke up, I think it was 2005. We got back together in 2011, so there's that window where we just weren't a band. And I started, that's when I started Bloodhorse, actually, around there. And I was like, hey, I think I can record some like demos or something for us. And I didn't, like, my brain didn't go to like, oh, I have a computer, I will use that. It was like, oh, we used to make recordings with those 4-track cassette things. So I got one of those, and they were really cheap at the time because nobody wanted them. And then it was like the progression of like recording pieces of gear that I got and like their quality just like jumped pretty quickly. It was like maybe a month or two later, I was like, wow, I think they make 8-track versions of this. So I got a 8-track cassette thing. It's like a much bigger unit. And then I was like, wow, now we got 8 tracks, and I messed around with that. And then I started looking through eBay and stuff, and you could get those small reel-to-reel recorders that had 16 tracks on half-inch tape, and I got that and like a little Ramza mixing board, and that's what I made the first Bloodhorse album on. And I just had mics and no other outboard gear. I think I had one, it's like a Lesis 3630 compressor. It's like the worst compressor ever made or something. But yeah, I made a record with that in the basement of the legendary Alston house, 12 Wadsworth Street. It I don't know. It was like a big punk house. Like the basement of that house, it housed 3 bands. It was Hope Conspiracy, Cave In, and American Nightmare. We all used to practice down there, and that became my my little studio for recording stuff. But really, it was just kind of an organic flow of getting into the tape stuff because I just thought it was cooler. It's like a cooler way to do it, and that. Along with, like, it was dirt cheap. I remember getting this giant 2-inch tape machine, 16 track. It was an Ampex MM1000. The thing was like as big as like 2 washing machines put together with like a bridge over the top with electronics up there. And I think it was like $1,000. I got it from some guy in Western Mass, so it was like drivable distance. And I just kept finding all these deals on analog gear that was like driving distance for me.
Wow.
And that just like kept me interested in it, I guess. And you know, nowadays it's like the only reason why I think people are that excited about recording with me. I mean, not to belittle myself, but like the fascination with it being all analog. And I've learned just recently that as far as people doing completely analog, like there's so few doing it like fully analog, like mixing back on a 2-track tape. I got a visit from the tape company, the manufacturer, recording the masters. They're like touring studios around the world right now, and they were in the Northeast, and the guy was like, wow, so you don't dump it to digital or anything? And I was like, well, I mean, I dumped it digital for bands that just come here to track drums or whatever, but like my own sessions, it's pretty much all analog. And he's like, there are only 2 other studios in the world that we know of doing that. No. One was in like Belgium or something, and the other one, I think he said, was like being built now. So, you know, I know you can like walk into Electrical Audio and make a analog record and a handful of other studios, but you know, I'm the one that's like, that's my go-to. Not that, you know, no one's like convincing me to do tape. I have been convinced to do digital sessions before, but you know, it's not what I'm known for. It's hard to get excited about it, even for me. It's like I could become a musician to click a mouse and stare at a screen all day. You know what I mean? And like, you know, digital has come a long way. Like, I think the argument for, you know, analog sounding better than digital or anything, like, I don't think that's so important anymore. I mean, analog has a sound for sure, but it's not some magical thing, really. What I really enjoy is the workflow of it. And even just like, okay, this reel is full, we got to switch reels, put a new reel on, and just the little break you get, you know, for the bands. But, you know, I work pretty long days here, even for me to just like have a moment to change a reel out, reorganize my thoughts, whatever. You know, that stuff's important, I think. And the sort of like decision-making process where I don't leave anything till mixing, till later. You know, it's like I print my sounds onto tape the way that I want to hear them, you know, so like they're all EQ'd, compressed, and then, you know, when it does come time to mix, it's just you put the faders up and you're sort of like 90% there. The rest is just like refining stuff. And I know can still record that way to digital, like absolutely. But there's more like there's no undo button for like if you want to punch in and like the punch in's not good, like you can't just like click a button and go back. You gotta keep punching in until you get a great one, or like cutting and pasting. You can't do that. Like the analog version of that, it sort of is punching in, like, do that section better. Yeah. But, I got really good at punching in. Like I can punch in like syllables and like single guitar notes, and someone misses a kick drum hit, I can punch in a kick drum, things like that. So I got really good at that. But it's just more fun. Like having a machine that only records and plays back music is pretty cool. It's like, like if you just put a computer next to a tape machine and a console or something and say, oh, which looks cooler? Like, I don't think anyone's going to pick the computer.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is it has opened up a whole world of possibilities for bands and people that normally record anything. And so like the creative output is like arts right now, and like there's a lot more to sort through. There is less sort of gatekeeping by a record label having the money to pay for a expensive studio, so like that's gone. But now it's like the people decide what gets popular, you know what I mean? And that's really cool. So I like sort of a lot of aspects of the sort of digital world with music. It's like I think people aren't even trying to figure out a way to get paid for digital music anymore. It's just like not even a thought. It's just like you put your music out and make your money in other ways to pay for the recording.
Yeah.
Rough out there with that. But, I come from like an older generation where just being a drummer, like I'm not a PR person. Like, I don't know how to promote anything or like manage stuff or book stuff, and I don't really want to. I kind of like being specialized. But like back then, you'd have somebody that only engineered records, maybe somebody that only mixed records. I only produce. I only tune the drums. Everything was specialized, and you had like people that were really great at it. And so the quality of the sounds of stuff was like, maybe we'll never get back to that point. And now it's like, and like a record label, they got the records made for you. They did the promotion and all that stuff. So now it's like a single artist that's like creating their own music in a computer. They also have to be pretty good at promoting themselves and like making their own videos. You want records, you got to pay for them. All this stuff, it's all just coming from the artists themselves, and getting off the ground, it's a lot harder to do. The punk in me is like, oh, that's better, because then, there's no one else like taking your money from you, it's a cool place to be if you look at it that way, that we've kind of ended up at right now.
This new album seems to drift in a heavier direction. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Kind of. It's just kind of what you kind of write in the moment, like the way I write, like I'll just kind of like noodle around, and like once I find like this weird like happy mistake, I'm like, oh, that's cool, like let me go down this rabbit hole and just kind of explore it. Definitely. It was just kind of where I was at the time, just kind of like angry guy. fed up suburban dad, whatever.
There's a lot to be angry about right now. So.
Right. So
and in the last many years.
Right. So yeah, no. I think it was just reflective of where I was at the time, and
Nice.
still kind of am for the most part. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. When you're writing music, kind of coming up with a theme or song titles, what is kind of driving the album title, the song titles, especially as an instrumental band? Is it just like you write a riff and as it's coming together, you're like, oh, this is what I'm feeling? Or are you like, this is what I want to say with this track?
No, I mean, sometimes it's like both ways, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, this is kind of what I was feeling at the time. Sometimes it's like, hey, I want people to like kind of discern this message, I guess, from this cryptic title.
Right.
And sometimes it's just kind of like just to be weird, and stupid. Yeah, so like I Love Mogwai, right? And they have this one weird song, like something called like I Love You, I'm Going to Blow Up Your School or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, sometimes it's just like random things that are just trying to be like weird, but for the most part, it is about like kind of where I am during the writing process. And yeah, basically for the most part where I kind of want people to get an inkling of what the music's about. I mean, that's the kind of cool thing about the, post-rock instrumental music thing, where like, I'm not like preaching like a message, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm just here to play music and like, hey man, whatever you take from it, awesome. You know what I mean? I hope you take something from it. But yeah, no, there's not like this like forced message or anything, so.
Yeah. It's like the good thing about the music is you could write these amazing, cinematic pieces that are gorgeous and give it some stupid ass name, right?
Absolutely.
Don Caballero naming ridiculous shit for all their albums.
I love Don Cab. They're so good.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk about straight edge. Straight edgeism for a second. Like, what led you to be straight edge?
I used to not be straight edge. I used to be pretty heavily addicted to smoking cigarettes, and that's funny, like to think about as someone who's been straight edge for almost 9 years now. Yeah, basically, I started off like pretty early. I started off with, I guess you can call it substance abuse, whenever I was like 12. Like I smoked weed for the first time when I was like 12. Same with cigarettes. And I never drank. That was something I never did. I never tried drinking. I never tried getting drunk. Never took a sip of it ever in my life. But yeah, I smoked weed because I was offered it once. I didn't really like it. I didn't think it was that cool. And then like as a sprouting adolescent in high school, when people are smoking and you're around them, the cool thing to do would be to just also take the blunt when they're passing it around and smoke it too.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very often that I would do that and feel good about it. I would just do it because the social norm of thinking it's pretty cool to do. And then I would just get high and be like, fuck, dude, like this sucks. Like I'm like mad paranoid. I don't know why I did that. Like me just trying to fit in basically. And eventually I was just like, I don't need to smoke weed to have fun. This is not cool. I mean, I would say maybe 15 to 20% of the time I ever smoked weed, I was like, okay, this is like relatively okay. The remaining aspect of smoking and like being high was just not sick. But the one thing that did stick with me was nicotine. Like I definitely got caught with that whenever I was young. I was smoking a lot of cigarettes, and I started weight training whenever I was a junior in high school, and we had to run like half a mile every morning. And that was grueling. Like the first few times that I ever did it, especially because I have asthma too. So like, you know, smoking half a pack of cigarettes every day and then going into school to run half a mile with asthma, and that is like
brutal.
Yeah, I'm like, every time that I would do it, I couldn't even get back to the room without stopping and like almost passing out, like almost every time. And I was like, this is fucking insane. Like I'm 16, you know. Yeah. I should be doing pretty good right now, but I'm not. And my buddy Tyler, he plays in the band Foreign Hands and Exide. He was starting a straight edge band, and he just messaged me randomly one morning asking me if I wanted to be in this band and like play guitar. And this was September 18th, 2016. And he was like, yeah, like you should play guitar in this band. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. Like I'm down. I want to play in another band. And then he was like, well, the one thing is that you got to be straight edge. And I was like, well, I'm not straight edge. And he's like, well, you could be. And I was like, oh shit. And then I really thought about it, because I mean, I had already been thinking about cutting all of the bullshit for like a second at this point, just because of the like the weight training shit and how it was really affecting me. And I was just like, man, I got to cut this at some point. And whenever he hit me up and asked me to be in the band, and he was like, but you got to be straight edge, I was like, you know what, fuck it. Like, I come from like a family that abuses substances on like a pretty hardcore fashion. I'm really light in comparison to a lot of what I've seen in my life. And so it wasn't ever a road that I wanted to go down in general. It was just something really designed by what I thought was a societal norm. And eventually I was like, man, this shit just isn't for me. And I feel like I have to get a grip on this right now. Otherwise, whenever I'm 25 and still smoking cigarettes, there's like no escape. Like there's no way I can get out of it at this point. Like I'm just kind of fucked.
Yeah.
So, and I'm pretty prideful on being able to catch that as early on as I did and be like, yo, like, thank God.
Yeah.
if I was still smoking, like, bro, I would be fucked.
There's a quote from you, or attributed to you, that says, why are we writing about war? Because we don't want war. We want to describe how bad war is. Do you kind of look around at the world and, 40 years of doing this band, that you're still having to maybe write about the same shit you were 20, 30 years ago?
Yes, it's a shame. It's a shame, that I always write about the war, because all the time when we write Better of Dead or other, there was Yugoslavia war was growing up, but I never want to write about the big war, I don't want to write about the politics behind the big war, I'm always interested in a soldier who's fighting in the war,
Yeah.
There was a couple of songs like, for example, Tempophobia, which means when a soldier in World War I, especially, fighting on the front line in trenches, and grenades exploding next to him. He was scared to get buried with all the shit coming down,
Yeah.
So he would get buried alive. These are a soldier fighting in the Vietnam War jungle, I don't want to tell the people who's a good guy or a bad guy, Some people ask me the arsonist on the cover, which is this guy. Is it President Putin or is it President Trump? Whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is just fantasy, But the cover describes the world situation, because you see a very peaceful atmosphere, with the soldier on the knees, the dead man, and this one, the Knarrenheinz, what we say in Germany, destroyed, set the world on fire completely,
Yeah.
But there is no politics behind. I'm interested in politics, but I don't want to write this in my lyrics, because I have to write song lyrics. But, when I look TV news or newspaper articles, I'm really scared. But I'm not scared of myself. I'm scared of the new generation growing up in this world,
Yeah.
And I cannot change anything, I just can go up on stage and scream it out, the message is really simple. We want to live in a peaceful world and stop the shit.
EP is called Seven. What gave you the idea to tackle a concept album as your like initial offering to the world?
Honestly, man, it was just vibes. It was literally just vibes. And it did turn into being introspective. Like at first we were like, oh my God, that's super cool. Like, you know, House of Cards happens to go with Wrath really well. Mm-hmm. And I feel like everything just lined up to the point where it was like, oh, like, yeah, this is something that we should do. But then as we really started writing the songs and getting into the nitty gritty of constructing these things, like I'm such a lyric heavy person, of course, like being a writer, like words have weight to them.
Yeah.
And when writing about the 7 deadly sins, like I was trying to pull like the nastiest parts out of myself and just slap them on paper so that I didn't feel them anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and to this day, I'm a very prideful person, but when I was writing Villain, I was like, wow, like looking at everything I'm writing, like this is not far off from what I would say to somebody if they did wrong me, which is not good. Like it's not, I was not being nice in the song. And ultimately, like I tried to take it as an opportunity to look inward and to see how I can better myself as a person. Yeah. And what I really hope people do when listening to these songs is they really figure out like, what song sticks to me and why? Is it the lyrics? If it's the lyrics, like, why do these lyrics have such a hold on me? Is it because somebody has done this to me and I understand it from an outsider perspective? Or is it because I'm doing this? Is it because I'm the problem and I need to look inward and fix something within myself?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a cool way to tackle kind of the idea of the 7 deadly sins without being like, you know, obvious about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people focus on the religious aspect, and we're just not about that. Like, we're like, whatever, it is what it is, but we're not trying to push any sort of narrative on anybody. Like, we want to draw open a new world for people that can escape this one, you know?
Yeah, as kind of like a counterbalance to the religious side, the artwork for the album is the tarot cards. Who came up with that design and idea?
That was me. That was me. The reason I came up with that was because, like, again, like I love the dark aesthetic. I love the witchy aesthetic, and to juxtapose the religious side of the 7 deadly sins, like you said, and I also just wanted to find a way to put imagery to the sins. Like every tarot card is different, and every sin has their own tarot card, and they're all symbolic of what they are themselves, which I think is really cool. And a lot of people, I hope they'll notice it, but you know, I just have like a crazy attention to detail because I'm insane, but
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
J'attends que le temps passe. Je sais que ton cœur est mien, mais rien ne remplace. Ta peau et tes mains et ton visage.
Let me kind of ask about writing with genre fluidity, because there are times when I listen to this record and I'm like, that's the coolest shit I've ever heard. And there are times when I listen to it where I go, I'm old and don't understand this at all. So talk to me about the writing process of kind of blending the heavy with the pop or the synth wave, and just kind of, is it conscious or is it just like, this is something I have and everything gets brought to the table and it doesn't matter?
Mm-hmm.
The mix between music styles is mainly because I personally hate doing the same thing twice. So I constantly have to find a new sound, a new music style, a new genre that inspire me. And when I find a song that I really like, I'm like, okay, we guys have to do something like that. And then we start from there. But the writing process is really chaotic. Like sometimes Kirby just start with a vocal line, a top line. Sometimes I just propose an instrumental to the band, and sometimes we compose all together around the same computer. But it's more it's not that way that often, because we're living like 3 to 4 hours drive away from each other, so we mostly compose at our home separately, I would say. And the different genre are coming from the different inspirations that we got, because we all grew up with different bands, and we want to mix everything we like. So yeah.
Album's called The Moral Chokehold. Where did the title and kind of concept come from?
So that's all Trey. Trey has actually named the last 2 records. Trey named Volition because he came up with it and we liked it more than anything that had been presented, which is typically how it works, right? And then we all came up with a bunch of names, and he actually came up with the idea. We went up to the whiteboard in our jam space, we wrote down a bunch of names. And what we kept doing was we kept removing one name. So like, all right, what's the weakest one left? And then we'd vote on it, and you 86 it, you know? Nice. And then what's the next weakest? You vote on it, you 86 it. And then we got down to 4 left. And then we looked at it, we were struggling because the remaining 4 were all really good. Mm-hmm. And we were like, damn, you know, like these are all really good. But we all collectively lean towards The Moral Chokehold. Okay. It's a name that Trey came up with, and we just loved it. And it kind of explains a lot of things, like the moral chokehold, where a lot of times people are pressuring you on a moral basis to be a certain way, even if what they're pushing is the wrong thing. And they're basically saying that you are immoral if you're not willing to say the truth about something. If the zeitgeist of what is morality says so one way or another. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's the moral chokehold. Yeah.
Why do we live in deception? It's all I've ever known. Can I change my perception? You just drown.